So, welcome everybody to our behavioral economics podcast today. And I've got a very special guest with me. But before I get to Meir Statman, I'm Hugh Massie, the founder of DNA Behavior. And you can tell from my accent, I'm from Australia, but I live in Atlanta. And I've also recently become the chairman of the Behavioral Economics Institute, working with Alan Sampson. So we're going to be doing far more to bring data and behavioral intelligence together. We think that's something that's really important and powerful research. We also want to make this transformative in terms of economic and social impact. And that's why I'm very excited to have Meir Statman, who is the professor of finance at Santa Clara University. I've been following at a distance Meir's work for about 20 years now, because I've always been fascinated by the things that he's had to say, and it's been on par with my thinking. So for him to reach out to me earlier in the year and say, let's talk, was really a big bonus for my year. So welcome, Meir.
I'm delighted to be with you.
All right. So why don't we just start off with a little bit about your life journey, your career journey from, coming from Israel, the findings you had there, to living in America and going deep in this exciting field and emerging field of behavioral finance.
So as you can tell from my accent, I am from Israel. I grew up in Israel. I did my undergraduate and MBA at the Hebrew University before coming to the United States for my PhD at Columbia. I did my studies in the late 1960s. And here's an instructive story. So I was studying economics and statistics. The building right next to mine housed the psychology faculty. And I would go there from time to time to earn pocket money by participating in experiments. Now, unbeknownst to me, Danny Kahneman, and Amos Tversky were in that building doing their pioneering work. I had no idea whatsoever about that work. None of my professors mentioned it. And so it is, you just kind of get the sense of what standard economics and finance in particular were about. Rational people. You don't really need this issue of psychology. So I understood, I had a sense that something is missing, but I did not know how to incorporate psychology into finance. Okay, so this really was when I came to Santa Clara University at the very end of 1979, and I heard Hersh Shefrin, who was speaking with Dick Thaler about issues that have to do with self-control in the context of savings, that I just kind of got it. Yeah, that now I understand why people are so passionate about dividends and why it is that people do not think that dividends and capital are the same, that all dollars are green. And then we were off and running. And the good thing was that because we were early, nobody, or not nobody, but there was a very small group who was interested in that. Other people thought that it's crazy. And I said, good, just continue to think this way, because there are many things I would like to work on, and I don't want any competition. So now, of course, it is all over the place.
But I think it's a good thing that it's started to come all over, to come to more mainstream. I think it's got a way to go. But when I first started sort of addressing some of these issues, which was later than you, it really wasn't until around 2001. I was still meeting with a lot of glazed eyes, and, when we talked about behavioral finance, it was a lot about how the stock markets moved. But to me, it was about the human being. And maybe, Meir, because you've really been at the very early stages of behavioral economics and behavioral finance unraveling, just talk about the three stages a little bit more as to how you've seen that.
So if you think about standard finance, which is what I studied at the Hebrew University, In standard finance, people are rational. What it means is not kind of in daily language, reasonable people. In fact, Modigliani and Miller defined it very precisely. They said a rational investor prefers more wealth to less and does not pay attention to the frame. In other words, a dollar that is framed as dividend is not different from a dollar that is framed as capital. So in the first generation of behavioral finance, in those early days, early 80s, the point was, yes, people want more wealth than less. Seemed absolutely reasonable, but they are irrational. That is, they don't understand that, for example, by trading more, they actually lose wealth rather than add to wealth. And so that was the thing. And so for most people, behavioral finance is still in that first generation. That is, they revel in confirmation errors and hindsight and the emotions and so on. And that is all fine and proper. I'm not coming to destroy that, or standard finance for that matter. I'm just building on that. In the second generation, what I said is, look, think about people in marketing. What are they saying? That is, here's car A and here's car B. One is a Toyota and one is a Maserati. Both of them will get you from home to work. So why is it that people are willing to pay multiples for a Lamborghini when they can buy a Toyota? People in marketing said, well, that's obvious, because there's an issue of those expressive and emotional benefits. And so when you are driving a Lamborghini, then you kind of say something, here's me, okay? I am not this boring Toyota driver. And you feel zoom, zoom as the engine roars, and the emotional benefits that go with it. So that was the kind of the second generation. And so what I said, for example, is, people care about social status. And so people are willing to pay, for example, for a Lamborghini because it elevates their status, or at least that way. And of course, different people think of status differently. That a professor can, in fact, have status in this upside manner of saying, I am secure enough as a professor not to have a Maserati. A beat up Toyota is perfectly fine for me. Now, in the third generation, so what I'm doing really is expanding the domain of finance. Okay, so we move from rational, very narrow and very precise, to irrational, which kind of describes what people actually do, to the second generation that says people care about money, not just for buying bread and butter, but also for issues of status, issues of fairness, issues that go beyond that. And now in the third generation, I'm expanding it further and say, what is money for? Money is for life. Money is for life well-being. So we need, of course, financial well-being for life well-being, but it is life well-being that we seek. And life well-being has to do with family. It has to do with friends. It has to do with health. It has to do with education, work, religion, and society, and so on. And so I'm really kind of expanding the domain of finance, and as it should be. And I'm kind of saying, good, you don't get it now, you'll get it later. Just leave it for me for now.
But I think if I'm right that in some of what you've said with the second generation, which is expanding the first, where we're acknowledging everybody has biases, and that it in fact is normal for a person to have biases, so that in a way this is normal. It's not something that's unusual. We all come with, as normal human beings, in a way, with a package of irrational ways in which we're going to make decisions. And in my work at DNA behavior, it's been more about unraveling how each person's different in the types of biases that might show up. For the extroverted person, will want to spend more money in restaurants, clothes, shiny objects around people, versus a reflective person's going to probably hoard it more, worried about how much they've got in retirement. Who flies where in the aeroplane? The aeroplane's still going to get you, the flight's going to get you to the same place at the same time. Do you spend $1,000 in coach class or $18,000 in first class? Like I found out the other day booking a flight to Australia. I mean, am I just going to sit in first class for my ego? I think, but everybody's going to look at that through a different lens, and that's probably exciting. But you're now in the third part, really expanding this out and getting to the fundamentals of how does this play out in our lives, and
So
how.
think about,
Yeah,
so you're speaking about really the second generation, right? What you're
yeah,
saying is that we, for example, care about things like status. Now, the distinction I make is between errors and wants. So some of the things we do, so when you see somebody buying, say, a Patek Philippe watch that costs whatever $10,000, you don't say the man is irrational, because a perfectly good watch costs $100. You say he has some desires to express who he is and feel good about himself in that way. And so it is really very important to make the distinction between wants and errors. Yeah, correct errors. But if you come to somebody who drives a Lamborghini and you say, this is an error, don't you see that the Toyota is just as good? He knows that, but and he might not admit that it's for his ego, but of course that is what he is
but to the
doing.
third stage that you're starting to talk about, and we'll get to your book, is in a way the person that's buying the Lamborghini, it could be just a financially silly decision, but it also could be a lot about his well-being
Yeah,
for
exactly.
his life, because that's giving him a great experience. It's making him feel good, empowered. Uh, it's something it's excitement. That's somewhere to
Yeah,
offload energy, and
yeah,
so it's a good decision. It's like flying first class or coach class. Yes, the rational bit saying you're going to still get there at the same time, but maybe it's important for your health. You've got work to do, or you need to be fresh when you get to the other end. There's a whole lot of reasons, and I think that's where you're talking a lot about in the third stage, life well-being, and maybe we could just talk about your book a little bit more of uh, uh, the wealth of well-being and a more holistic approach to behavioral finance, because it's not just, as you were alluding to, it's not just biases, which is really in a way where it started, about your whole life.
yeah. It is just that. You can see many things. Culture, for example, matters greatly, and of course, our listeners know by now that we are two foreigners living in this country, exploring the strange behavior of the natives. Uh, so think about education. Um, the fascination, the drive to get to Ivy League colleges is relatively new. I mean, when I say new, I say 50 years ago. When I came, it was not really a big deal. Uh, Now it is a big deal. Now there are a good number of reasons for that, and people will say that it has to do with utilitarian benefits. That is, if you graduate from Harvard, your income is likely to be higher. Well, it turns out that is actually not so. If you graduate from a reasonable university, in terms of earnings, except for the very top, it would not make a difference. But of course, it has those expressive and emotional benefits of I graduated from Harvard. Now, think about people. who immigrate from China or India. They come from a different culture. And in that culture, there are very important utilitarian benefits from graduating from a top university, because graduating from a top university lets you have a government job, lets you go on to a profession, being an engineer or a physician, and so on. Now, parents they've been educated in India. They came to the United States because they graduated from top universities. That gave them the leg up. So that is what they instill in their children. But the United States is different. And so I live in Silicon Valley, where I see that every day. So again, what they are really doing to their kids and to themselves is diminish their life well-being, focusing on something that is really valuable in India, but not in the United States.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting issue coming up in America now, where it's going to be so hard for young kids to get a job, even, but they've gone to universities and are shelling out quite a lot of money, for fees, people going out of state, so that jacks up the cost. Then you've got accommodation. It's quite, be nothing for kids to have $250,000 to $400,000 of debt, but are they going to earn that back in a job? The employers want that. I think that's some of what you're saying, that the Indian culture is respecting the fundamentals of education more than America, but even it's fast eroding in America very, very, very quickly, that belief system. I think it's getting just to, have you got the skills to do a role straight away? And do you need to spend $400,000 at university? It's going to drive a lot of decision making.
Well, that is true. Now, of course, you don't need to get a $400,000 education. You can get it for much less. There's state university and do that. And this thing about high unemployment among college graduates now because of AI and so on, that really is kind of temporary. I think that college graduates really have an advantage in knowing how to think, broadening the horizons. I can see that. I can see that in my students. So it is not a waste. And I think that, but you have to kind of ask yourself, what are you trying to get from a college, and find the college that is right for you, rather than one that is most prestigious, that your parents can drop in and say, my son goes to Harvard and my daughter goes to Yale, and so on. I see that. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where lots of people from India, and so I can see that, and I can see how they kind of beginning to get the point that this is a different culture, and if you want to get a degree in engineering, there are many good universities where you can do that. That costs a fraction of what an Ivy League college does.
Because that's going to give you the skills. And, I had that conversation with a friend of mine in the choice of university for his nephew around, does he go to Pennsylvania University and pay, $500,000 or so with university fees and accommodation to become a dentist, or he could do it in Georgia where he lives for a lot less. But I think this is what you're probably starting to bring up, is the tension between the overall life well-being and the money side of it, that a lot of decisions have been made about what you do, say, going to college.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make more money, as opposed to the wellness of your whole life.
That is right. And so it is really important to reflect on it, because not all domains of life are going to be perfect. That is, in some families, it is a disabled child. In some families, very wealthy families, and they would really gladly pay the tuition of Harvard, but the kid doesn't even want to go to community college. That is a real issue. And so how do you make peace with that? So you can see that you can move resources. For example, if you have a disabled child, uh, and you have plenty of financial resources, you can support that child without constraining your own budget. You feel about it much better than if giving something to your kid means depriving yourself of something, and then you get mad at them because they are not treating money as carefully as you would like them, and so on. Uh, so if you are wealthy, and if you think about it right, you say, the hell with it. I have more than I can reasonably spend. So they waste some money. Well, big deal.
Yeah, so it gets down to, though, I think, that isn't it really, we're talking about a prioritization of what you're going to spend the money on based on your values, and coming into your values is some background. Like I was taught by my mother and my grandmother who brought me up, because my father had died when I was young. Hugh, you need to get a meal ticket. And I wanted to be a lawyer at the start, but then I got the marks to be, to do accounting and tax law. So I went into that, and I was told it didn't matter what you did after that, but you need to have that as a meal ticket in case something goes wrong. And then even when I wanted to become an entrepreneur at 30 years old, my mother said, I think you might be a few years too late. You should have started this earlier. So in a way, you can't win really, but but I think it gets down to that. What influences do you allow to take over? Which ones do you shut out? But values I think, are important, but the culture is important in how these decisions get made. And that's why we probably can't judge one human against another human for what they've got or what they do, which was you're alluding to with the car, right? Or the first class travel,
I speak about life as serendipity. That is just you. Everyone seems like going in zigs and zags. That is, I studied economics and statistics, and then finance. I didn't like the job that I had in Israel. I decided to take the risk. I didn't think of it as risk, coming to the United States for a PhD. I was lucky to be one of the first in behavioral finance. And, it could have gone so many other ways, uh, perhaps not even worse than that. There would have been different. And I think that this really is important for parents, for example, to know that their kid is not a Toyota and not a Lamborghini. You cannot drive them. You can guide them, you can cajole them, uh, and you can see how people think. That is in the book. You will see stories of people who say, my parents were frugal, they were responsible with money. I learned from them. And then you have stories of people who say, my parents were spenders, they went bankrupt, and so on. And the lesson I learned is that if I follow that, I'm going to be bankrupt too. And so I'm not going to do that. We are intelligent people. We look at experiences and we say, this is worth following and this is worth not to.
I think the money experiences that come, through your life journey are very important, and to understand in a way and respect the journey that your parents went on. I can remember my first conversation with my mother about money was the day I started school, and she gave me 20 cents to deposit in the Commonwealth Bank, and I got my passport, bank sort of passbook, and it looked like a passport, so that's why I said that word. I've still got it today. And she said, I'll put 20 cents a week in there for you. So in early 1970s, I was getting 20 cents a week. And guess what? I got that all the way until I finished school, 14 or 13 years later. but so I didn't have a lot really at the end because 20 cents was not the same as it was when you're
Right.
young. But,
Oh,
she taught me, I think saving is important, but also spend something for today and have a life experience, because my dad died at 36. And while he had some life experiences and was an eye surgeon, he didn't have his full life. You don't know when it's going to get taken away from you. I think education's important. What you sow into the future for your kids, is important. But I think those money lessons become very, very important for all of us, and they shape how we live our lives.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and and
My mom would say, spend money, but don't waste it. Uh, Very good lesson.
and I think you've brought out in your book, A Wealth of Wellbeing. You've brought out all of the stories across absolutely every dimension there, because in a way life is multidimensional, but with it, because I think that part of what we're saying is that money is tied to every aspect of your life.
Yes.
Money is multidimensional too, and um, it's making a decision. Which one do you look after first? Is it the life well-being, or the financial well-being? That's an interesting situation.
It is, yeah, life, financial well-being underlies life well-being. You cannot have life well-being without money. You need to buy food, you need to raise your kids, and you need to go to the doctor. You need money, but of course there is more to life than money. And then you think about family and how do you share wealth. Say if you're lucky enough, with family, with community, uh, uh, with people in larger society. Uh, Issues of friendship, issues of work, and so on. We have teachers who come kind of as adjuncts or teaching professors. They've had life in industry as executives, and they either like it or not. But now that it's saying, hey, I always wanted to be a teacher, so here's an opportunity. I'm going to earn a pittance relative to what I earned as an executive, but that is much more satisfying. It enhances my life well-being, and my financial well-being is set anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research now out there, the World Happiness Reports, and, bringing out that there's a certain amount of money you need to be happy, but you go beyond a certain level, you don't need all of it, all of that money. And I think you can see that with some of the very, very wealthy people in America. It appears like they've got a fantastic life because they've got a lot of money, but uh, maybe it's not underneath, and to go chasing them, to have more than them, is not necessarily a good goal either. And then we've got poverty as well, and we need to help people as well get to a place of having enough.
Yeah, yeah. Don't We shouldn't discount money. People with more money are happier than people with less money. Even people with 3 billion are happier than those with 2 billion on average.
I
But
think I was bringing up there's just complications that come with it, and it
it
doesn't
is.
imply happiness in its own right.
It is, yeah. If you don't know, I mean, you can leave. You can, as I say, you can leave the inheritance to the lawyers who work with your three sons and daughters, fighting over those large amounts. By the time they're done, there's not much left over.
So, Meir, as we sort of, head towards wrapping up, just talk about how you see financial advisors, wealth managers, family officers, particularly those people embracing these concepts of life well-being a lot more, as the third dimension of behavioral finance, or the third stage in their work. Because, you've been talking about it really in a lot of ways for years, and I have, but we've still got a way to go in getting this to become more mainstream thinking.
Yes. So it really is very important to know that in fact, I would say that most advisors know that is, they know that eventually they are, I call them uh, really life or well-being managers. Okay, they're not financial managers. They're well-being managers. I describe them as financial physicians. That is, a excellent physician is good at the frontier of knowledge of medicine, but also about hand-holding, also explaining things in language that you can understand, also putting things in perspective, and so on. The same applies to advisors. And they don't have to be psychologists or psychiatrists. I'm not. Uh, I say, look, think about it as being a good friend. If a good friend says, my son made me mad, I think I'm going to write him out of my will. You're not going to say, I know a lawyer who writes wills. You're going to say, are you sure? Can you imagine what will happen after you're gone? And brother does not speak to sister, and so on. That is really what is necessary. In this sense, it is really common sense that people already know, and they just need to apply. And so it is a matter of how to cross over from finances to life. I think that my book, if I might say, can help in that, because clients who read that can come back, and advisor can say which stories resonated with you, which ones seem odd to you, and you find that is not applying to you. What do you think about, I begin the book with a story about giving with a warm hand, giving to kids money when they get married and need a down payment for a house and so on, or making them wait until you die at 95 and they are 65. And I say, think about that, that in different cultures, they do it differently. Uh, I'm not, I'm not pushing my values on you. I'm just saying, here are the alternatives. Think about what is best.
But I think that you've provided a really good message that we can work with, that yes, being a financial advisor, the client's hiring you in a way to help build an investment portfolio, get the finances straight, sort out budgets and whatnot. That's the transactional side of it. But advisors could also step across the aisle and just think of themselves as a friend of the client, even though it's an advisor-client relationship. I think to think of it as you just said, what questions would I ask a person who was a friend? And that is a really simple way, I think, for this to be thought of. And then it gets down to, well, what are the questions you're going to ask? If you're being a good friend, you're not going to be judgmental. You're going to sit beside the person and you're going to let them unravel the story. Now, going a step further, if you're not comfortable even to sit there totally as a friend, or you want to go, you don't know how to be the friend today, you could say, there's this great book out there called A Wealth of Wellbeing by Meir Statman. Why don't you go and have a read of some of the wisdom in there and come back and tell me what resonated, right? Or read the chapter on health and wealth, or relationships and wealth, and come and tell me about that. Because what we're really wanting to do is get the clients to tell stories and relate to something. And then at the end, and then ultimately, that's what's going to lead to a richer discovery process and making the right financial choice and legal choice, if needed, that goes with that. And I think that's a big part of this message.
That is what I hope advisors will do in helping the clients. That is a kind of breaking out of friendship. Just think about when you are a young person and you're looking for a mate, and when is it that it is okay to say hold her hand, or do something that crosses from just being friends to possibly starting a romantic relationship. It's always what if is as you try to hold her hand, she just pulls her hand away and says, no, you're my friend. I'm never thinking about you as a potential husband or wife. So to the extent that you can have ways to decipher that, to break that, and really say things like, as you said, which story resonated with you, which are odd to you, then you can say, and then they're likely to say that resonated with me because here is what happens in my family. And in every family, just as you said, your pain was losing your father who was 36. That is uh and you have to overcome that. Our pain is in an older daughter who is disabled. uh Everyone has their own story, their own things, and it's not something about fixing it. You cannot fix the death of your father. I cannot fix my daughter's disability. What I can do is adjust to it. That is uh, just think about compensation.
And you can make decisions that are good for her life and your life, which is the well-being, by adjusting to it. And then if you have an advisor in that setting that they understand the journey you're on, is good. And I think that going and having a look at the book is also helpful in a way, because not everybody, it provides a cue to create stories or to have a discussion. Not everybody is good at asking the questions actually, or knowing how to relate to everybody in each situation. So it sort of provides a level setting type tool to go and have those conversations. Um, so just to wrap up, Meir, what do you think would be the fourth stage of behavioral economics?
Yeah, I was thinking about it because I can count, and I know that four comes after three. But I think about it now not so much as a fourth generation, but really expanding it. And so I'm working on something that might turn out to be a book about socially responsible investing, sustainability investing, and I'm saying really one of the domains of life is issues of religions, issues of values. This is really about values-based investing, and so how is it that you use that desire to enhance your life well-being by enhancing the life well-being of other people, by philanthropy or other ways. And so I expand the notion of, say, a investment, a socially responsible investing, to again speaking about it in the context of life well-being.
Yeah, and I think that's a good path to go. I think everything that you do, whether it's in your personal life or through your business, can have positive social impact if you have that on your mind. I think that people, when that subject comes up, sometimes think it's something completely separate, and I'll do that later or when I'm older or I've got more money. But actually, it can be part of your whole life walk, and it will make you happier. And I think the other one, then maybe it will become the fifth generation. I think we've got to do more with health, and just our own personal life energy, and the health advisors need to some way be able to step into the health arena a little bit, because the costs are so high. And how do we get that provided for, and we get people healthy, which again relates to life well-being.
Absolutely, yeah. This deserves a podcast of its own. There are many aspects there that are worth exploring. You will see some of them, of course, in my book. Yeah, so I will not venture there because it will take too long.
Well, we could unpack every life limb here, I think, or limb of life well-being, and we've just unpacked two more. Uh, so Meir, for people to find the book, they can go to Amazon to get the book, A Wealth of Well-being. That's probably the easiest place.
The
Is
easiest.
there anywhere else that you would like people to go and to read about your work?
Well, if you just put my name in Google, what has he written or what was written about him in the last month or the last year, you're going to have a ton of things. And you'll see some papers I've written. This paper about kind of socially responsible investing or sustainability, and that just came out in the Financial Analyst Journal, and it is written in everyday language. I don't like equations. I could do equations, but I try to speak to people in language they understand rather than to impress them with my mathematical prowess.
So that's the great thing about AI and where we're at in the world today is you only have to put one question into the right place and a whole lot of useful information comes up and it'll get more and more accurate. And so, I think the great thing is your life story is going to be out there for an eternity. That's just like Aristotle's is. That's how I sort of look at this for myself, that this will go beyond our lifetimes. And that's, I think, part of why we're doing the podcast today and this work. Behavioral economics is going to go a long way.
Indeed,
So thank you.
indeed.